Hi, American history students. Today, we're going to talk about the Bay of Pigs in Cuba. Now, the first thing I want to talk about is a lot of times my students get this wrong, and even adults. They think that the Bay of Pigs is the same thing as the Cuban Missile Crisis, and they are very different events. Same guy, but different events. The Bay of Pigs is about taking out Fidel Castro, the leader of Cuba. The Cuban Missile Crisis is where we find that Russians are putting missiles in Cuba pointed at the United States. So understand that today we're talking about our attempt to try to remove Fidel Castro as the leader of Cuba. Okay? These are really short and sweet notes. We're just going to give you the basics, and hopefully that will help you get what you need. So here we go. So who's involved? These are U.S. soldiers, and we are training anti-Castro Cubans. These are people who have been kicked out of Cuba. A lot of them were friends of Castro. They fought with him, they worked with him, and a lot of them knew him well, actually. We are training them in Florida to invade and overthrow him. And then, of course, we're going against Castro and his men. This took place, as we said, in Cuba. Now, remember that Cuba is 90 miles off the coast of Florida, and this is the Cold War. We are so afraid of communism spreading throughout the world, and they are awful close to our border. So we're very nervous about that and the fact that he is communist. They invaded right here in the Bay of Pigs, right here. It was an amphibious invasion right there. Okay. This happened April 17th, 1961, and it lasted only 2 days, which is why we don't spend a lot of time on this in class. Just want you to know the basics, and then we're going to move on to the next event. What happened? The U.S. sponsored the overthrow of Castro, and we used former Cubans who hated him. Um, and unfortunately, we didn't use them enough as far as their knowledge, but we trained them to do this invasion. Remember that this was supposed to be a covert operation, and the U.S. was not technically involved, right? We didn't want anybody in the world to know that we were behind what was going on, but everybody knew. Okay? Why? As we said, Castro was a communist leader. And not only that, he was allies with the Soviets, which leads us to this world domination kind of idea that everybody's going to become communist. And we want to assassinate and take out Fidel Castro. Now, there's one thing on our notes that is not on our notes that I wanted to mention to you. We did actually hire a woman who was one of his servants to poison him. And at the last minute, she got nervous and backed out because obviously, if she got caught, she would be tortured and killed mercilessly. But that was actually the first step, and that didn't work. So now we're going to try to invade and take out Castro. This was a huge failure for the United States, and we look bad, like really bad. So, why did it fail? Well, number one, we kept moving the date of the attack back, and every time they did that, more people learned about what was happening, and pretty soon, Castro actually knew. In fact, some of our Cuban soldiers left after the first cancellation because they knew this was not going to be good. So, our covert op became an overt op because he knew about it. A couple of things that happened during the attack. As our first initial attack happened, Kennedy saw that our guys weren't doing very well. And so he canceled the support for our bombers and the airstrikes. And of course, that left our bombers kind of hanging. So, and left our soldiers hanging on the beach as well. There's not enough funding. Probably the biggest mistake we made was we didn't listen to the Cuban people that we were training. We kind of saw them as beneath us almost. And we made these Cuban leaders into puppets when they knew exactly how he fought, they knew how he thought, and they knew the strength of this group and how strong they were. But we really didn't listen to them. In fact, it was so bad as we're training these Cubans, we didn't even have Spanish speaking trainers or translators. So, how well is that training going to go? Can you imagine? The other thing is, we just really did not do our homework. We should have known more about the ability of that military group, and they were strong soldiers. They were fighters, and they were ready to come after us. That's for sure. The result, as we said, it was a horrible failure for the United States. We looked like idiots in front of the world. Of course, we denied that we were ever involved, but everybody knew. In fact, I'll tell you something that I didn't tell my other class last year. Um, Kennedy actually, as a result of this failure, fires some of the people that are in charge of the CIA and the military. And so, if you talk about different theories about the Kennedy assassination, one of those theories is that those CIA leaders and military leaders were behind it in some way. That's up to you to believe what you want, but yeah, it was bad. And if you see this cartoon here, it's a great example of what we just talked about. Kennedy smoking that cigar, and it just blows up in his face, and that's what happened to us. Now, if you look at this document here, it gives you so much good information. I'm going to move my picture over there. First of all, if you look at the average age of the soldier, our guys were average 23 years of age, which means that they're a little bit older than what we've seen in World War II or in Korea. And we are outnumbered. Take a look at this: 75,000 Cubans against 1,500 Americans. So we were kind of, if we had had that covert option, I think it might have gone better. But especially when they knew we were coming, it was doomed to fail, which is really sad. 5 of our planes were shot down and 1 was lost, and 2 of our boats were sunk. Now, let me tell you why that's important. Take a look at our map over here in the Bay of Pigs. See these 2 boats that were sunk? Well, it just so happens that that's where the officers who were in charge of the invasion were located. So when they sunk those boats, it meant the guys that were calling the shots were taken out of the picture, and it leaves our guys on the beach hanging. Now, if you were there and you could visualize it, you could imagine amphibious attack from the water to the beach. We had ships shooting at the shore, right? And we had planes that were bombing and attacking. The other thing that they didn't prepare for, I guess I didn't mention this earlier with my other class, was that they didn't predict the terrain. Like, it was really marshy, and it took a long time for our guys to get in there. And our amphibious um, invasion did not go very well in that terrain. So let's talk about what happens. First of all, and if you want more information, there's some great info if you want to look up more closely. But one of the things it mentions here is that there was a lot of USSR equipment. Remember that they are sponsoring Cuba. So we're fighting Russian tanks, Russian planes, Russian guns. So they were very well equipped. And here's the sad part: because we were trying to wash our hands of this and say we weren't involved, those boys that were caught as POWs, most of them Cuban, were tortured and killed, a lot of them mercilessly. And we didn't want to be involved, right? Not right away. Eventually, as you see down here, we basically traded $53 billion worth of food and medicine to Cuba to get those POWs back. But by then, a lot of them had been tortured and killed. So, kind of a sad story for U.S. history. Now, this again is the takeout of Castro as the leader. Now, in a few years here, we're going to find out that the Russians are putting missiles in Cuba, and they're pointed at the U.S., which is what we're going to talk about tomorrow, the Cuban Missile Crisis. Come back for more tomorrow. See you then.